Warring Scottish gangsters arrested in Dubai. High-ranking Brazilian cop and politician assassinated by the country's most powerful mafia. All of that and much more in this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. Welcome back to Organized Crime News Weekly. This is the weekly show where we discuss the goings-on in the global criminal underworld. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe so we can help grow this channel. Also, please make sure to support my channel. You can do that by just contributing $2.99 a month. Any contribution is greatly appreciated, and it helps me to continue making these videos. At the end of each video, I will give a shout out to each individual who contributes. On the afternoon of September 15th, on the coast near Sao Paulo, Brazil, Roy Ferraz Fontes, Secretary of Administration for the municipality of Praia Grande and former Chief of Police for the state of Sao Paulo, was gunned down in the street as he was driving his car. He had just left City Hall where he worked when he noticed men in another car following him, leading to a high-speed chase. Unfortunately, he would crash into a bus, and 3 gunmen armed with rifles exited the pursuing car before executing him and making their getaway. Their vehicle was later found nearby set aflame. Suspicions for this murder have immediately fallen upon the PCC, the Primeiro Comando de Capital, or First Capital Command in English. They are considered the most powerful criminal group in Brazil and South America as well. They are responsible for trafficking huge quantities of cocaine to Europe and have ties to some of the world's most powerful mafias, such as the Ndrangheta. Ferraz Fontes had been in the crosshairs of the PCC for nearly 20 years and had survived numerous assassination attempts by the PCC prior to his death. He began his career in the Sao Paulo Civil Police in the early 1980s, and by the mid-2000s he was named the director of Sao Paulo's Capital Judicial Police Department, and one of his main targets upon appointment to this position was the PCC. In 2006, Ferraz Fontes was responsible for all PCC leaders in custody being transferred to the maximum security prison Presidente Venceslau after discovering the group was planning to stage riots in prisons across Sao Paulo. This in turn would lead the PCC to sentence him to death. Most notable amongst the transferred individuals was Marcos Williams Herbas Camacho, better known as Marcola, the undisputed leader of the PCC. These transfers and the disruptions of their plans led to the PCC leadership ordering a wave of attacks across Brazil and most prominently in Sao Paulo, as well as riots in 29 penitentiaries across Sao Paulo. In Sao Paulo, PCC members on the outside launched attacks primarily on police officers and law enforcement, but also civilians while carrying out raids on establishments such as police departments, jails, and banks. Armed with machine guns, grenades, and homemade bombs, they fired upon anyone whom they came across, as well as emptying city buses before setting them aflame. The attacks were so severe and widespread throughout the city that Sao Paulo's traffic reportedly decreased by 95% throughout the ordeal. When the siege ended 9 days later, 564 people had been killed. However, in the aftermath of the Sao Paulo attacks, Ferraz Fontes would increasingly come under threat. In 2010, he narrowly survived an assassination attempt by the PCC when Brazilian police arrested 2 would-be assassins with rifles en route to kill him. On 3 occasions between 2020 and 2023, he was targeted for robbery, but it's unknown if the PCC were potentially behind these acts. Since Ferraz Fontes' murder this past week, 3 individuals have been arrested for playing a role in the plot. One of them, Felipe Avelino da Silva, has been definitively identified as a PCC member. Another one of the arrestees, a woman by the name of Dehesley Oliveira, had been sent by someone to collect one of the rifles used in the murder the day after the shooting and deliver it to the other 2 men who were arrested for the murder. It is unknown exactly who the shooters were at this moment. Brazilian authorities suspect Ferraz Fontes' murder was possibly ordered by an unnamed PCC leader who was just released from prison last month. Ferraz Fontes is just another casualty of the PCC's war against the Brazilian police and judicial systems. They've assassinated numerous prosecutors, lawyers, and high-ranking police officials in the past. But Ferraz Fontes' murder is notable because his actions against the PCC would cause them to commit their most violent acts back in 2006 when they basically laid siege to Sao Paulo, one of the biggest cities in the world. But the PCC continues to pose a threat to the state of Brazil, with thousands of members spread across the country and throughout all the country's prisons. It increases its stamp on international drug trafficking and has truly emerged as one of the most dominant and violent mafias throughout the world. On Tuesday morning, multiple raids were carried out in Dubai that saw the arrests of the perpetrators responsible for much of the gangland violence that has exploded in Scotland for the past few months. 5 men were arrested, and 4 of them have been identified as Ross McGill, Stephen Lyons, Stephen Jameson, and Stephen Larwood. Ross McGill is the most notable amongst these arrested men, as he is thought to be the one directly orchestrating all the violence going on back in Scotland that since March has seen multiple firebombings, machete attacks, and drive-by shootings, which allegedly stems from an incident earlier this year when Edinburgh drug kingpin Mark Richardson allegedly purchased cocaine from McGill, paying him £500,000 in fake notes, and this is what ignited this war. To help him in this war, McGill enlisted the help of Stephen Lyons, the leader of the Lyons crime family, the most powerful drug trafficking group in Scotland that has ties to the Kinahan cartel. And in turn, Mark Richardson has allied with the Daniel crime family, the arch rivals of the Lyons crime family. And the Lyons and the Daniels have been fighting a brutal war against each other for over 20 years now. Stephen Jameson, one of the other men who was arrested, is a former close associate of Scotland's former most powerful drug trafficker, Jamie the Iceman Stevenson, who recently was locked up for 20 years. And since then, Jameson has allied with Ross McGill and Stephen Lyons. And finally, the 4th arrested man, Stephen Larwood, is a longtime friend of Ross McGill, as they both used to be members of the Ranger Bears Ultra, the Ultra fan group for the Rangers Football Club. But all these men have been living in Dubai for a number of years. Ross McGill fled to the UAE in 2022 due to fears he would be arrested after an encrypted app he was using was hacked into. It is unknown exactly what criminal charges these 5 men face, but it is believed to be for acts carried out back in Scotland, as the Scottish police are said to have been working closely with Dubai police to target them. Just hours after their arrest, a member of Tamo Junto, which is the group that has been carrying out the attacks back in Scotland on behalf of Ross McGill, one of their members was targeted for assault in prison by members of the Daniel clan in the HMP Edinburgh prison on his way back from a visit. However, before they could carry out the attack, the man started running away shouting, which alerted the prison staff. On Wednesday, it was reported that Stephen Bonzo Daniel, the head of the Daniel clan, was spotted at a taxi firm in Glasgow where he held a meeting to reportedly discuss the recent arrests in Dubai with fellow associates. It seems that the arrests of these 5 men could embolden the Daniel family, but we shall see. The 5 arrested men back in Dubai potentially face being behind bars for 2 years as they fight their extradition back to Scotland. They are believed to be in the Dubai Central Prison, also known as Al Awir. The prison has been dubbed a hellhole by human rights groups, with overcrowding, constant murders of inmates, and torture handed out by guards to inmates. And the inmates also have limited access to legal counsel. So it remains to be seen if the arrests of these 5 men in Dubai will see the end to the war that's been going on the streets of Scotland since March. I personally don't think this will end any hostilities, as these criminals are able to do things behind bars as well, and they're able to communicate with each other through phones illegally smuggled into the prisons. Also, the fact that this feud involves the Lyons and the Daniel families makes it almost certain that it won't end, as these families have been fighting for over 20 years, and this feud is probably not going to end anytime soon, considering the long hostilities between them. For now, the violence might temporarily subside as these 2 factions start to regroup in the wake of these arrests. I do think for the time being, though, that we will see less of the violent attacks and firebombings that have characterized this conflict. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Organized Crime News Weekly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Special thanks to Julia Gates 4573 and the Green Beret Boxer 34 for contributing to this channel. I'll be back next week to report on more stories concerning the global criminal underworld. Thank you so much for tuning in.